Hello, everyone. This is week 3, and last week we looked at cognitive development through the lens of Piaget and Vygotsky. Well, this week we're going to look at cognitive development again, but this time it's all wrapped up in social emotional development, which is really part and parcel the same thing when it comes to very young children. So we're going to look at Maslow, we're going to look at Erikson and Bronfenbrenner this week. We're also going to talk about dispositions and the ecology of human development analysis that's going to be due at the end of the week. So let me share my screen and we will continue on. So this is, obviously, you're on this page. This is the announcement page for Blackboard, and you'll be reading Bredekamp chapter 4. You will also be reading an article about dispositions, why children's dispositions should matter. All you have to do is click here. It's right there. And they really matter. So let's talk for a minute about dispositions. You know, dispositions are those ways of thinking that help us be successful or not. Think about this. When you're in an early childhood classroom, you've got children that have the disposition to be creative. That definitely helps children learn. You have the disposition to be a lifelong learner, even as an adult, as a teacher. That's a great disposition to have. That's one you want to foster. You have the disposition to persevere and finish your work. You might have children that have the disposition to be challenging, or the disposition to be careful, and everything they do is very thought out. Those are all dispositions. Dispositions are just ways of thinking. And as teachers, we want to really foster those ways of thinking and doing things that are going to help children be good students. And that's a social emotional thing. And that goes hand in hand with social emotional development. And you really want to foster those ways of thinking that help children learn, help children finish their work, help children be interested. You want kids that want to come to school every day, not children that are bored to death. Okay, so enough said. This article, Why Children's Dispositions Should Matter, is wonderful. In fact, one of the authors, Dr. Doros Vaselis, used to teach in our early childhood program here at NSU. She retired a few years ago, but she was a colleague of mine, and it's a really good article. So I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to go ahead and pull out the PowerPoint for this week. It's in our week 3 materials, and there it is. And I'm not going to read it to you, but I do want to talk about it a little bit. So we start out with Erikson, and trust versus mistrust would be the beginning of his stages of social emotional development. You know, children develop trust by having their needs met when they're very young. If children are fed when they're hungry and changed when they're needing changing, they develop trust. If they're handled with care and loving kindness, they develop trust. On the other hand, it says, what are some caregiver behaviors that contribute to children's development of trust? I just told you. And obviously, the opposite would be true for caregiver behaviors that do not promote the development of trust. Back in the 50s, there was a trend towards putting infants on a schedule and just letting them cry it out when they're hungry in between. That's not really conducive to a development of trust. And these stages are certainly not engraved in stone. Some children move from one stage to another stage earlier or later, and that's totally okay. And some children may move into a new stage and then back to the old stage, depending on what's happened to their life. And that happens as well. So for the next stage, Erikson's stage of autonomy versus shame, This is the toilet training stage. And this is when children begin to feel like they're exerting some control. And let's face it, 2-year-olds don't have control over very much, but they do have control over when they go to the bathroom and where they do it. And that's just being honest. That's the one thing they have control over. So many times, if you have a battle of the wills, that's going to be what the battle's about. Again, what are some caregiver behaviors and strategies that contribute to children's development of autonomy? Give them choices. I know that's easier said than done for a 2-year-old, but they do need to have some opportunities for, do you want to wear the red socks or the blue socks? Obviously, they're going to wear socks, but they can pick the red or the blue. Do you want to, use the big spoon or the little spoon to eat your cereal with? Just choice. Give them an opportunity for some autonomy so they don't fight you over the things that are really important to you. On the other hand, what are some caregiver behaviors and strategies that do not promote the development of autonomy? I can tell you right now. Rigid rules and forcing children to adhere to super rigid rules controlling every inch of their lives is going to cause a battle of the wills. And I like to pick my battles. There are just some things that are not worth battling over. I can remember when one of my kids she was 2 or 3, and she would dress herself in the morning. And she would always come out with 2 different colors of socks. That was her thing. And, I always, when I washed them, I always made sure I matched them up carefully and put them back in her drawer. And she'd come out in the morning. She'd have a pink one and a blue one, or a green one and a yellow one. She had purposely done that, obviously. And I got to the point where I said, "Ooh, that's a nice color combination. Way to go." And there was always, I'd sit her in the shopping basket when we'd go to Walmart. And there was always some helpful lady at the checkout who'd look at me and say, "Ma'am, do you know she's got on 2 different color socks?" I go, "Yes, didn't she pick great colors today?" So, sometimes you pick your battles. If it's not worth arguing over, it's not a big deal. Yeah, give them some autonomy. Same thing in your classroom. Give them some autonomy if you teach toddlers. The next stage is the initiative versus guilt. This is if you teach in preschool, you've got them. Okay, so again, children want to have some power and control during these years. They don't have control over much. Give them some choices. Give them, what centers would you like to go to today? There's a choice. Do you want to clean up in here in this center now, or do you want to do it after we have snacks? Your choice. And cleanup's not a choice, but when you do it, maybe. Children who are successful at this point, they feel capable. Unfortunately, when they fail, when they continuously get the idea that they are not meeting your expectations, they develop a sense of guilt and self-doubt. I just can't do anything right. Nothing I do is good enough. There you go. So again, caregiver behaviors and strategies, give them opportunities for choice. This is an older version of the 2-year-old. That's all it is. And then from there on, we go into the school age children. If you're teaching kindergarten through 3rd grade, you're going to have these kids. Is industry versus inferiority. And kids start to feel proud of their accomplishments and abilities. On the other hand, this is also the time when they begin to realize that, they're not good at everything. They may be great at reading and writing, but their math's just not that great. Or they may be great at math and reading, but their handwriting's dreadful. They notice this. They begin to compare themselves to the other children. So, caregiver behaviors that would contribute to pride in their accomplishments, point out what they do well. stay away from the, oh, great job. Great job on what? I like the way that you put a whole paragraph down. You used great punctuation on that. Okay, now they know what the great job was. Be specific. Stay away from great job. Strategies that would hinder. Well, there are a lot of strategies that teachers use that hinder this pride in their accomplishments. For one thing, I think having a chart on the board that everyone gets a star when they make 100 on the spelling is dreadful for the kids that never get the star, because not everyone does. And, you know, it's sort of like having that mark out there in public of, look at what I am so inferior to the rest of them. Why do that to people? Now, if you want to put a star on someone's spelling paper when you give it back to them, go for it. But you don't have to put it on the board. Okay, you get the idea. Public shaming is not my thing. Okay, then we go from there to the teenagers. And this is the identity and identity confusion of adolescence. And, you know, identity doesn't strictly mean gender identity. It means who you are as a person. Am I an outgoing, happy-go-lucky person? Or am I a, you know, kind of a, I like to be by myself and do things on my own kind of person? There's a lot of confusion about what kind of person we are when we get into our teen years. That's why they're not really anyone's favorite years. But, you know, when you get a lot of positive reinforcement and support during that time, you do become self-confident, independent, and you feel like you have some control over your life. In order to feel like that, though, you have to have opportunities to be independent. You have to have some opportunities to make decisions again. And the same thing with caregivers, parents, anyone who's raising these teenagers have to give them, you know, opportunities to make decisions, obviously within some boundaries, because teenagers left to their own devices don't make the smartest decisions, but give them opportunities to make small decisions. You know, they've got to develop some confidence in their own abilities. And from there, we go to intimacy versus isolation, young adulthood. You know, lots of you folks are in that age group. This is where you develop some close-knit relationships with others. And it doesn't have to be in a romantic relationship. It can be a friend relationship, and that's fine too. And then there's generation versus stagnation, which is middle adulthood. And this is really where you begin to feel successful in your chosen career. And then later adulthood, which is really where you look back and you see, what have I been and what have I accomplished, and either feel really good about it or perhaps not. So there we have that. That was Erikson. Now we look at Maslow. Maslow looks at them through the lens of his theory, which is the humanist theory. He believes that children construct knowledge and understanding and creativity when their basic needs are met and they feel good about themselves. So, you know, that's really an important thing. And you'll hear a lot about Maslow and meeting his hierarchy of needs. The first one down here, the physiological, obviously kids can't learn when they're hungry, tired, thirsty, uncomfortable, have trouble breathing, whatever it is. First thing we have to do. How are children impacted? Well, if you're teaching in a classroom, you've got a child that's hungry. So all they can think about is, I need food. Always keep a box of dry cereal in your closet and some paper towels. And if you know they're hungry, I would put paper towel on their desk and some Cheerios, just a big pile of Cheerios, because I know most schools have free breakfast, Well, what if they don't get there in time for the free breakfast? They shut down. I don't know about your school where you're at, but I know in mine, they didn't send anything to the classroom. We had a horrible insect problem and they wouldn't let us have official food in our classroom. So I had some unofficial cereal in my closet. The next tier on his triangle here is safety needs. You know, when children don't feel safe, they also have difficulty learning. You might see this when kids come in your classroom in the morning and they're dead tired, and the first opportunity they have, they go into the quiet corner so they can go to sleep. Well, something's going on in their life that's impacting their sense of safety. They may be homeless. They may be living in a car with their family. They may be at the homeless shelter. Someone may be in the hospital in their family and their whole life is turned upside down. They may be exposed to abuse of some kind, whether they're witnessing a parent being abused or other children being abused or being abused themselves. Their sense of safety is being impacted. They're not going to be able to learn. Trust me. The third tier, love and belonging. And this is similar to Erikson, where that need to connect with others is great. And when children know how to make friends and can reach out and maintain friendships, that sense of security, love, and belonging is strengthened. And then the fourth tier, self-esteem. And this is similar to what you saw with Erikson as well. Children have to feel successful. They have to feel like they're capable. They need to build their self-respect. Of course, they have to learn how to respect others as well. The fifth tier, this is the career tier. What am I doing? Have I fulfilled my personal expectations? And those are all Maslow. You really need to know these, and you also need to know Erikson's, because all three, Maslow, Erikson, and Bronfenbrenner are well represented on the OSAT. You've got to know the different levels and what each of the levels constitutes. I took the OSAT 3 years ago, and there were numerous questions on each one of these gentlemen. And here's the third one. This is Bronfenbrenner. You know, Bronfenbrenner looked at children's development as a set of systems. And these systems are what's built around the child. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and pull up something that I want to show you here. Give me just 1 minute. I made a picture of this for one of my classes a few years back, and I want to pull this up and put it on your Blackboard page as well. But it's taking forever to pull up. Just give me a minute and it will come up. Okay, so let me stop sharing and reshare, and I will have this posted too. Okay. So this here is Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory in dartboard format, because I remember things better when they are in a picture format. I'm highly visual. He starts out with the microsystem, because in the microsystem is the center of Bronfenbrenner's set of beliefs about how children develop. The child sits right in the middle. And in that system here, you've got the school, you've got the teacher, you've got the family, You've got the neighbors. You've got the child's extended family. And the child is affected by all of that. But that's a bi-directional system because the child also affects the family. Think, for instance, if you have a baby and it's a really super easygoing baby and it sleeps all night and it's just a delight, that affects the parents' lives or whoever's taking care of that baby. They get to sleep all night, they feel good, everything is great with the world. On the other hand, what if you have a really colicky baby? They're up like every hour during the night screaming. You never get more than 45 minutes sleep at a time. You're walking around like a zombie all day. That affects you too, doesn't it? It's bi-directional. Think, for instance, if you have a very easygoing first grader and they come to school and they're just like, oh, what can I do this morning, Mrs. E, to make, to make your life wonderful. You've got first graders like that. Sure, lots of them. On the other hand, then you have a first grader that comes in that's had a terrible night before, hardly slept. They come bouncing into your room, start tearing things off the shelves, throwing them at the other kids. Yeah, you've got kids like that too. Does that affect you? Of course it does. You have to intervene now. It has an effect. Bi-directional. Everything in the microsystem is bi-directional. So then we go to the mesosystem. That is the next circle that surrounds children. But the mesosystem, and you've got to remember this, is a set of relationships. Mesosystem is relationships. It's the relationships between parents. It's the relationships between the family, wider circle of family, and the parents. It's the relationship between you, the teacher, and the parents. It's the relationship between the children and their friends or others, maybe not friends. Say, for instance, you've got, it's bi-directional. Again, just like the microsystem. Say, for instance, you've got a two parents that are on the verge of divorce. They're screaming at each other all evening long. Does that affect the child? But yeah, of course it does. Say, for instance, you have a child with some really severe medical needs. Does that affect the parents and their relationship? Of course it does. Say, for instance, you've got, you're sending notes home to the parent about some behavior issues that you would like help with. And the parent reads that note and looks at it and says, oh, what does that lady want now? She's always complaining. That's indicative of a pretty negative relationship with the teacher. Does that affect the child? Of course it does. They're going to look at you with different eyes now because they've gotten a negative feel from the parent about you. It's a relationship. On the other hand, when there's a strong relationship, very positive between the teacher and the family, that has an effect on the child as well. They realize that you are working cooperatively, and what happens in one place gets back to the other place, and everyone has to work together here. Same thing with bullying. When children watch other children get bullied, it affects them. When children bully on their own, it has an effect on others. So it's very much bi-directional. The next one is the exosystem. That's the purple one here. And that purple one, it's not bi-directional. because it consists of things that affect the child that they have no control over. Say, for instance, moving all the time. I would have first graders in my classroom oftentimes that had been in 3 or 4 different schools by spring break when they were way behind because they never really settled into one class before they had to pull up stakes and move again. They never made friends. They weren't able to really focus on a curriculum, nothing. They were so busy moving. It was very difficult, had a serious effect on the child. Nothing they could do about it. Parents' work schedule. You know, sometimes you have to work 2 jobs in order to, pay your rent and buy food. That has an effect on the child. There's nothing the child can do about it, but it has an effect on the child because the parent's not home to help them with their homework, to do extra reading with them. It definitely has an effect. The next system is the blue system here, and that's the macro system. Again, it's not bidirectional. There's nothing kids can do about this, but it has an effect. It's all of those beliefs that come with one's culture that influence how we think and feel. What holidays do the children celebrate? That's a big part of it. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing this and go back to the other PowerPoint and pull that up because I want to cover that piece a little bit more on here. We've talked about this. Okay. So the macro system, which was the blue, really affects how children look at gender roles because different cultures do have different beliefs, societal values, the value of certain jobs. All of that comes from the family. And it has an influence on the child, but the child does not influence those beliefs. And then the last circle on the very outside is the chrono system. And the chrono system is a set of events that happen over time that affect children. Some of them are normative and they're good events and they're viewed positively, like when you graduate from college. That is a normative event and everyone around you is happy. If you have children, they're happy. Everyone's happy. Some events are not happy. They're non-normative and they're still within the chrono system and they leave families in crisis. We're looking at automobile accidents, deaths, sudden deaths, war, famine, floods, tornadoes. Those all happen to people and they have a really significant effect on children, but children don't have an influence on those events. So when I talk about Bronfenbrenner, lots of times I'll use the luggage because to me, the ecological systems theory is the luggage that children drag around with them. They really have very little control over the luggage, but my gosh, sometimes it can drag you down. We all have the luggage because we all grow up with all kinds of things that happen to us, but it can make a huge difference in children's behavior in your classroom. Okay, so let me go back down here to the end. And then when we talk, I know I mentioned dispositions at the beginning, but I just want you to know knowledge and skills are not dispositions because children may have knowledge and skills, but not have the inclination to use their knowledge and skills. The inclination to use the knowledge and skills, that's the disposition, is getting them to do it. That's the disposition to put what you know and can do to work. Okay, so let me go to assignments here. And you're going to do an analysis of a case study this week using Bronfenbrenner. And this is in Learning Module 3, but I actually have this on the announcement page. It's so much easier. All you have to do is click here, and there it is. This is the story of Mario and Carlos, and they're busy whacking at each other in the classroom, and it's mom's response that's just a little curious, but I've heard it before. It happens. And you're going to do an analysis of this. So let me pull up the syllabus, and we'll go into that. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay. Here it is. Okay. So the ecology of human development analysis, you're going to read through. I told him to hit back and explain using Bronfenbrenner systems what may have contributed to Mario's behavior in the classroom. Think about it. Which part of his microsystem is being reflected not only in Mario's actions, but his mom's, really? How about the mesosystem? That's very telling. How about the macrosystem? And then the exosystem. I've left the chronosystem off because I don't think it really pertains to this. Which explain the way those four systems may have contributed to the behavior in the classroom. Now, here comes the tricky part. For each system, put yourself in the teacher's shoes in this case study and explain how you might have responded based on your own experiences in each system. So each one of these analyses is going to be vastly different because you've all had a different life. First, you're going to explain what happened based on the four systems, just depending on what's written in the article. But then you're going to go back and say, if I was the teacher, based on my own microsystem, this is how I might have responded. And based on my mesosystem, here's an action I would have taken. And based on my macrosystem and then the exosystem, this is what I would have done, because these are my experiences. And obviously, we don't teach in a vacuum. We all have lives that we've lived before we got into the classroom. So you're going to look at yourself. What would you have done? Very interesting. And as you can see, there is a rubric. Please familiarize yourself with the rubric, and that way you know exactly how it's going to be graded. It's in your syllabus. It says due before, let's see, the day is over on Sunday, 1/29. And there we go there. Okay, very good. If you have any questions about anything I've talked about or something else to go with the class, please let me know. We'll set up a Zoom. I hope you have a wonderful week. Bye-bye.